Laura was wide awake at once. She always liked to hear about dogs. She lay still as a mouse, and looked at the firelight flickering on the log walls, and listened to Uncle Peter. "Well," Uncle Peter said, "early in the morning Eliza started to the spring to get a pail of water, and Prince was following her. She got to the edge of the ravine where the path goes down to the spring, and all of a sudden Prince set his teeth in the back of her skirt and pulled. You know what a big dog he is. Eliza scolded him, but he wouldn't let go. And he's so big and strong, she couldn't get away from him. He kept backing and pulling till he tore a piece out of her skirt. It was my blueprint, Aunt Eliza said to Ma. Dear me, Ma said. He tore a big piece of it right out the back of it, Aunt Eliza said. I was so mad I could have whipped him for it, but he growled at me. Prince growled at you? Pa said. Yes, said Aunt Eliza. So then she started on toward the spring, Uncle Peter went on, but Prince jumped into the path ahead of her and snarled at her. He paid no attention to her talking and scolding. He just kept on showing his teeth and snarling, and when she tried to get past him, he kept in front of her and snapped at her, and that scared her. I think it would, Ma said. He was so savage, I thought he was going to bite me, said Aunt Eliza. I believe he would have. I never heard of such a thing, said Ma. What on earth did you do? I turned right around and I ran into the house where the children were and slammed the door, Aunt Eliza said. Of course, Prince was savage with strangers, said Uncle Peter, but he was always so kind to Eliza and the children, I felt perfectly safe to leave them all with him. Eliza couldn't understand it at all. After she got into the house, she kept pacing around it and growling. Every time she started to open the door, he jumped at her and snarled. Had he gone mad? Said Ma. That's what I thought, Aunt Eliza said. I didn't know what to do. There I was shut up in the house with the children, and not daring to go out. And we didn't have any water. I couldn't even get any snow to melt. Every time I opened the door, so much as a crack, Prince acted like he would tear me to pieces. How long did this go on? Pa asked. All day, till late in the afternoon, Aunt Eliza said. Peter had taken the gun or I would have shot him. Along late in the afternoon, Uncle Peter said, he got quiet and he lay down in front of the door. Eliza thought he was asleep, and she made up her mind to try and slip past him and get to the spring for some water. So she opened the door very quietly, but of course he woke up right away. When he saw she had the water pail in her hand, he got up and he walked ahead of her to the spring, just the same as usual. And there, all around the spring in the snow, were the fresh tracks of a panther. The tracks were as big as my hand, said Aunt Eliza. Yes, Uncle Peter said. He was the biggest fellow. His tracks were the biggest I ever saw. He would have got Eliza sure if Prince had let her go to the spring in the morning. I saw the tracks. He had been lying up on that big oak over the spring, waiting for some animal to come there for water. Undoubtedly, he would have dropped down on her. Night was coming on when she saw the tracks, and she didn't waste any time getting back to the house with her pail of water. Prince followed close behind her, looking back into the ravine now and then. I took him into the house with me, Aunt Eliza said, and we all stayed inside till Peter came home. Did you get him? Pa asked Uncle Peter. No, Uncle Peter said. I took my gun and hunted all around the place, but I couldn't find him. I saw more of his tracks. He'd gone on north, farther into the big woods. Alice and Ella and Mary were all wide awake now, and Laura put her head under the covers and whispered to Alice, My, were you scared? Alice whispered back that she was scared, but Ella was scareder, and Ella whispered that she wasn't, either, any such thing. Well, anyway, you made more of a fuss about being thirsty, Alice whispered. They lay there whispering about it till Ma said, Charles, those children will never go to sleep unless you play for them. So Pa got his fiddle. The room was still and warm and full of firelight. Ma's shadow and Aunt Eliza's and Uncle Peter's were big quivering on the walls in the flickering firelight, and Pa's fiddle sang merrily to itself. It sang Money Musk and The Red Hot Heifer and The Devil's Dream and Arkansas Traveler, and Laura went to sleep while Pa and the fiddle were both softly singing, My darling Nellie Gray, they've taken you away, and I'll never see my darling any more. In the morning, they all woke up almost at the same moment. They looked at their stockings, and something was in them. Santa Claus had been there. Alice and Ella and Laura in their red flannel nightgowns, and Peter in his red flannel nightshirt, all ran shouting to see what he had brought. In each stocking there was a pair of bright red mittens, and there was a long, flat strip of red and white peppermint candy, all beautifully notched along each side. They were so happy they could hardly speak at first. They just looked with shining eyes at those lovely Christmas presents. But Laura was the happiest of all. Laura had a rag doll. She was a beautiful doll. She had a face with white cloth and black button eyes. A black pencil had made her eyebrows, and her cheeks and her mouth were red with the ink made from pokeberries. Her hair was the black yarn that had been knitted and raveled so that it was curly. She had little flannel stockings and little black cloth gaiters for shoes, and her dress was pretty pink and blue calico. She was so beautiful that Laura could not say a word. She just held her tight and forgot everything else. She did not know that everyone was looking at her, till Aunt Eliza said, "Did you ever see such big eyes?" The other girls were not jealous, because Laura had mittens and candy and a doll, because Laura was the littlest girl, except baby Carrie and Aunt Eliza's little baby, Dolly Varden. The babies were too small for dolls. They were so small they did not even know about Santa Claus. They just put their fingers in their mouth and wriggled because of all the excitement. Laura sat down on the edge of the bed and held her doll. She loved her red mittens. She loved the candy. But she loved her doll best of all. She named her Charlotte. Then they all looked after each other's mittens and tried on their own, and Peter bit a large piece of his stick of candy, but Alice and Ella and Mary and Laura licked theirs to make it last longer. "Well, well," Uncle Peter said, "isn't there even one stocking with nothing but a switch in it? My, have you all been such good children?" But they didn't believe that Santa Claus could really have given any of them nothing but a switch. That happened to some children, but it couldn't happen to them. It was so hard to be good all the time, every day, for a whole year. "You mustn't tease the children, Peter," Aunt Eliza said. Ma said, "Laura, aren't you going to let the other girls hold your doll?" She meant little girls must not be so selfish. So Laura let Mary take the beautiful doll, and then Alice held her a minute, and then Ella. They smoothed the pretty dress and admired the red flannel stockings and the gaiters and the curly wooden hair. But Laura was glad when at last Charlotte was safe in her arms again. Pa and Uncle Peter had each a pair of new warm mittens, knit in little squares of red and white. Ma and Aunt Eliza had made them. Aunt Eliza had brought Ma a large red apple stuck full of cloves. How good it smelled! And it would not spoil, for so many cloves would keep it sound and sweet. Ma gave Aunt Eliza a little needle book she had made with bits of silk for covers and soft white flannel leaves into which to stick the needles. The flannel would keep the needles from rusting. They all admired Ma's beautiful bracket, and Aunt Eliza said that Uncle Peter had made one for her, of course, with different carving. Santa Claus had not given them anything at all. Santa Claus did not give grown people presents. But that was not because they had not been good. Pa and Ma were good. It was because they were grown up, and grown-up people must give each other presents. Then all the presents must be laid away for a little while. Peter went out with Pa and Ma and Uncle Peter to do the chores, and Eliza and Ella helped Aunt Eliza make the beds, and Laura and Mary set the table, while Ma got breakfast. For breakfast there were pancakes, and Ma made a pancake man for each one of the children. Ma called each one in turn to bring her plate, and each could stand by the stove and watch, while the spoonful of batter Ma put on the arms and the legs and the head. It was exciting to watch her turn the whole little man over, quickly and carefully, on a hot griddle. When it was done, she put it smoking hot on the plate. Peter ate the head off his man right away, but Alice and Ella and Mary and Laura ate theirs slowly in little bits, first the arms and the legs, and then the middle, saving the head for last. Today the weather was so cold that they could not play outdoors, But there were the new mittens to admire and the candy to lick, and they all sat on the floor together and looked at pictures in the Bible and the pictures of all kinds of animals and birds in Pa's big green book. Laura kept Charlotte in her arms the whole time. Then there was the Christmas dinner. Alice and Ella and Peter and Mary and Laura did not say a word at the table, for they knew that children should be seen and not heard. But they did not need to ask for second helpings. Ma and Aunt Eliza kept their plates full and let them eat all the good things they could hold. "Christmas comes but once a year," said Aunt Eliza. Dinner was early because Aunt Eliza and Uncle Peter and the cousins had such a long way to go. "Best the horses can do," Uncle Peter said. "We'll hardly make it home before dark." So as soon as they had eaten dinner, Uncle Peter and Pa went to put the horses to the sled, while Ma and Aunt Eliza wrapped up the cousins. They pulled heavy woolen stockings over the woolen stockings and shoes they were already wearing. They put on mittens and coats and warm hoods and shawls and wrapped mufflers around their necks and thick woolen veils over their faces. Ma slipped piping hot baked potatoes into their pockets to keep their fingers warm, and Aunt Eliza's flat irons were hot on the stove, ready to put at their feet in the sled. The blankets and the quilts and the buffalo robes were warmed too. So they all got into the big bobsled cozy and warm, and Pa tucked the last robe well in around them. "Goodbye! Goodbye!" they called, and off they went, the horses trotting gaily and the sleigh bells ringing. In just a little while the merry sound of the bells was gone, and Christmas was over. But what a happy Christmas it had been!